So today I'm going to give a recap of a Warhammer 40,000 tournament that I attended over the weekend, which is run by Games Night. It's the friendly local game store in Kingaroy, which is in regional Queensland, Australia. This was the first 2,000 point tournament I've been to, and it was also a 2-day 5-round grand tournament style format. So I'm going to go through some of the preparation that I did, my list, how I think it will play, the tournament setups, and how I ended up doing. So for the tournament, I was tossing up between bringing my Orcs and my Thousand Sons. I ended up going the Thousand Sons because originally, if I was going to bring Orcs, I wanted to bring a Speed Freaks list, but I just didn't have enough time to paint up the models that I thought I needed to make the list work well at 2,000 points. So instead I went for the Thousand Sons. I already had over 2,000 points of models for them, and I really just needed to add Magnus, so it gave me a bit of motivation to paint him. Now the tournament had points for squad markings in the painting rubrics, so I added squad markings to all my rubrics, and also for WYSIWYG I painted up a bunch of Warp Flamers because I want to run all Flamers on my list. Another point for the rubric was a display board, so I had a Thousand Sons one, but I decided to make one up for my brother who was attending. He's got Iron Warriors, so I made this trench board pretty quickly, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Now onto the list, and the centerpiece is Magnus. He's in pretty much every competitive Thousand Sons army. He's just massively powerful, very hard to kill, very fast. He makes your army better. So yeah, there's no reason not to take him in a competitive list. Even at the fairly high points value that he is, he's one of the most expensive models in the game. Yeah, you just can't go much wrong with him. He's just a rock for the rest of the army. The next is Araman. So he's also quite a popular pick, mostly because he gives you 3 Cabal points, and also he gets a free ritual once per game. And if you put him with a unit of rubrics, which I will do, you get +1 to wounds, so that actually makes rubric Marines very dangerous, because they will be basically wounding everything on a minimum 5+. So he's a good guy to hold the midfield. I have a second rubric squad, and I put an Exalted Sorcerer with them, and he's got the Umbralific Crystal upgrade. So that lets them teleport once per game, and their role is to basically jump wherever they can cause the most havoc and sort of split the enemy's forces. They have to go off and deal with him. His ability is he can revive the rubrics as well, so it makes them a bit more survivable. So they have to deal with him, or they ignore him and then they can go and do whatever they want. My third rubric squad is a small one, and I have an option to put him with one of my other sorcerers, or they can just go off by themselves and take care of smaller threats. One mission where you get a free reserve, I might leave them in reserve so they can come onto the side of the board, and they're with a Infernal Master. He's got the Arcane Vortex to give him a very dangerous flamer attack, and he can turn 1, roll to a 6. I also have a squad of Terminators. I know they're probably not the best competitive choice, but they are fairly independent, and they can do a reasonable amount of damage in both ranged and melee. I mostly have them in here for Deep Strike, so they can drop in turn 2 or turn 3 wherever they're needed most to, do an action or hold an objective, or be a bit of a versatile unit, depending on how the game plays out. My last sorcerer is on a disc, and he has the Lord of Forbidden Law enhancement. So this lets me cast a ritual that's already been cast before. So he's mostly in the list to cast a second Doombolt. He's on a disc, so he's fairly maneuverable to fly around wherever that second Doombolt is needed most, or another ritual where it might make sense. So he can maybe go with that 5-man rubric squad if it makes sense instead of the Infernal Master. I have a squad of Zangors. Their role is really just to sit on my home objective. It's a squad of 10, but they've got 32 bases, so they can spread out and prevent enemy deep strikes. They will generate me an extra Cabal point on a 4+, so that always comes in handy, especially later in the game when I start losing a few sorcerers. And they're not super terrible in close combat with the chain swords. I find that the chain swords are much better than the Zangor blades. Just having that extra attack is handy, so if need be they can run forward. The banner lets them reroll some of their moves, their Brayhorn lets them reroll their battle shock tests, so they're just my home objective holder. And finally, for my units, I've got 2 units of Zangor Enlightened. They're basically the cheapest unit in the army. They're fairly quick, they have a reactive move, so their purpose is to just run down the sides of the board to get secondary missions like containment and just be a nuisance. Their precision bows might come in handy for sniping a character, but they're mostly there for action monkeys. And the last choice I have is a Demon Prince on wings. I actually wanted to get a Muthalith Vortex Beast, but I just wasn't going to be able to paint it in time, so this guy is just basically a default pick with a model that I had. His teleport does come in handy, so he can do actions. He's very expensive action doer, and he can somewhat hold his own. But he's not really an optimal pick, but he's just one there because that was how I could get to 2,000 points. So because Thousand Suns are such a tricky army, they get a lot of different things to remember, I make up this cheat booklet. So it's got all the data sheets and all the abilities organized by phase, and it really helps me minimize the amount of checking and flipping around that I have to do. So now it's time to go to the tournament, and one thing I want to show off is the terrain that we've got. I've put in a lot of hard work myself and pretty proud of the quality of the terrain we have. It's very immersive and fully painted, but still is sort of tournament appropriate. We have lots of templates to help set up between rounds. So onto the games, and round 1 I played a Necron's Awakened Dynasty, very heavily focused on revival shenanigans and just very tough units. It was a really good game. I got baited into a lot of tricks there, and I ended up having to use a secret mission. I played it like I was trying to get Magnus into the deployment zone, but I actually teleported my Warp Flamers in there and did the battle line one. I actually still would have lost that game if I didn't get 10 points for paint score, and my opponent didn't, so pretty lucky there. I also had a crazy 37 wound roll for Araman's units in Overwatch. This was after almost killing a Necron warrior unit, 17 models dead, but then they revived all of them. So round 2 I went up against a Skitarii Hunter cohort. So a bit of a mix of everything in this one. Got lots of infantry, lots of big guns, Karl, yeah, just a bunch of everything. So this one I actually got pretty lucky. Turn 1 I pushed Magnus up the side of the board to try and take out some vehicles for Bring It Down. I actually whiffed and I failed my charge, failed a reroll, and he was sitting there out in the open. So my opponent moved basically half his army over there to try and shoot him. Didn't do a very good job, got some pretty bad rolls there, and that allowed me to basically split his army in half because of the terrain and take out one half of the army in the middle of the board, and then all these big guns and vehicles that were left were sort of trapped behind terrain, so I had a pretty easy win in the end there. So after the first 2 rounds I was feeling pretty good, but it put me in the way of the eventual winner and his Chaos Cult Horde. So just a ton of bodies, I think 170 bodies, and the main danger was these 3 huge units of accursed cultists. Just couldn't get any space, and just the extra movement and the extra damage shenanigans that this detachment has is just gross. I tried my best to flame them away, but they could just sort of hide behind terrain and get extra moves. And they just, I was sort of trading one rubric unit for one accursed cultist unit, and it just got too much. So got a pretty heavy defeat there. So the first match of day 2 was a mirror match against Thousand Suns. There were some slight differences in the list. He had a Vortex Beast. That was really the main difference between us. So it was actually a really good, tight seesawing game. Round 1 I sent Magnus right in and he died, so I thought the game was over there. But then I managed to kill his Magnus and block up all of his troops in his deployment zone, so he thought the game was over there. And we ended up tussling, and in the end it was getting 15 points on the Omega objective that won it for him. So round 5 it was against Death Guard. Unfortunately there was no Magnus versus Mortarion. This one had lots of Plague Marines and a couple of War Dogs, and I was able to successfully kind of split the force and sort of take them apart one part of the time with Dawn of War and my superior movement. I could sort of focus down on one side of the board and then move Magnus over to the other side of the board. It ended up being a fairly high scoring victory to me for that one. So at the end of the tournament I came in 3rd with 3 wins and 2 losses. Pretty happy with that. I think to get better I just need to practice a lot more. I was pretty happy with the list and how it works, and I had a really good time. Everyone was really friendly and had some fun games, and I would strongly encourage anyone who is maybe a bit intimidated by tournaments to just go and try one out, because you'll find that the vast majority of people are just looking to have a good time. So I hope you enjoy this bit of a different video, and I'll be back with the next painting video soon.